Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Let's Build HubSpot Websites with Anton. How you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good.
Awesome.
Um, had a lot of fun last week, talking about the basic building blocks, the atomic
Yeah.
design structure. Um, and I guess maybe that leads into this week to think about one of the smallest building blocks of our overall HubSpot portal, which is properties. Um,
Yeah.
how they get data via forms specifically is what we're going to jump into today. Is that what you were thinking as a good next step?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially since forms are, I would say, one of the most important features of any website. So
Yeah,
there
and let's start
are,
there. Why do you think that first? I
I
don't
would say,
disagree.
I mean, I, I, I would say it like that. With the help of a form, you can get to know your visitors a lot better and therefore optimize your service, your website, whatever you do, much, much better to your audience. So, therefore, with the help of forms, I would say you can tailor your services to your audience and therefore increase revenue in the long
Yeah,
run.
I think
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it. And it's always surprising, like when you give people the opportunity to tell you exactly the information that you would like to have, you'd be
Yeah.
surprised at how often they give it to you. If
Mhm.
uh, if you're providing value, up front, that's where like I think what we're about to talk about today, like
Yeah.
the strategy of what the form is supposed to be doing, and instead of thinking of it as a way to get an email address, or
Yeah.
as a way to deliver you know, the asset, the PDF, the guide, whatever, um, and moving towards like how can we get a bigger picture of this person who's filling out the form and things like that. I'm excited to share about because on the other side of this, we've got all this buying intent data and like let's try to figure out all the things when we could just be asking people sometimes,
Yeah.
via our
Yeah.
forms. So let's dig in, man.
Yeah. Um, so I mean, let's start with a very common example, I would say. What I have seen quite a lot in my lifetime. So, wait, there we go. Yes, we are sharing. So, this is just a wireframe of a form that is quite common, I would say. Right? So, you have several inputs, you have several radio buttons, and then, of course, you have like the legal stuff at the bottom, right? And as you've mentioned, people will freely share information about them with you if you ask. That's right. But from the UX perspective, you, this is a some sort of balancing act because of course you could ask a person 50 questions, right? And then the form would have 50 inputs. Is it like in balance with the value that the person receives, right? And especially since uh, we are living in a such fast-paced world, nobody has time to fill out 50 forms, 50 inputs. I mean, there are other things that HubSpot can do to minimize these things, but in general, right, you have to a think about how you can get the most information from a user, but it shouldn't feel like give me all of your data, right? So this is, I would say, somewhat related to you storytelling or UX, right? And then how you make those big forms visually eye appealing, right? Because I mean, I'm not sure if this is something that is visible right now, but this frame is called bad form, and I did it on purpose because from a UX perspective, there are a lot of things that could be optimized. So if we take a look at the select options here in the middle, right? So this is also something that you have to think about when you're creating the property itself, right? Because HubSpot has several options to display options or yeah, like options. So you have drop down fields, you have radio buttons, you have checkboxes. There are a lot of things, right? And my personal rule of thumb is if you are providing more than three options to the user, make it a drop down or a select option. If it's less than three, you can go with a radio button or checkbox, something, right? Because, I mean, I could go even further and say, hey, choose from one of those choice fields. And the user would be like, huh, why are there so many options, right? So think about your buyer persona, basically, and put yourself in the shoes of somebody who would see such form
Yeah.
and
And
just
so like
ask yourself, yeah,
so what is the I understand why this would be a bad
yeah,
form, but I'm
yeah.
guessing like what is the goal? In this case, for it to be a bad form, can you just define the goal of this form that we're looking at?
I mean, the form, the purpose of this form would be, uh, let's say, just for, um, okay, so the purpose of that could be, hey, you get a white paper or you get a some sort of virtual download, right? And I mean, I had a case once several years ago, where the marketing team of a company created a form with 30 plus fields, like a real buy our product form, right? With, hey, put in your address and your phone number and your banking account, like all those things. And after a while, they were wondering why almost nobody filled this form out, right? And I was like, guys, you can't overwhelm the user with so many options. In my or my personal recommendation would be or was in this case like, let's create a membership area, right? So if you think about that, if you register for any web service or any software this day, you just put in first name, last name, email, maybe company, maybe, right? And then right after the registration, you get to a profile page where you can put in all of your other information. And this is a way better uh, UX, I would say, because once the user is in the member area, he already registered for your app, for your service, whatever, right? So you already have this user. So make th- um how should I say it? Make the step to take as small as possible, right? So just catch everybody, and then with workflows, with other forms, and so on, you can then route this person to A, to B, to C, wherever you want to see him or her. And again, this is called a bad form because it's so long, it's visually not that great, I would say, because it's also somewhat chaotic, right?
Right.
And you could even overcomplicate it more by include conditional logic. Like, hey, if you select option A, then you get also two more fields. If you select option B, you get three more fields, and so on. And you will most likely reach the point of any user who, who will just close the tab before even submitting the form. And this is something you really don't want to. And on the other hand, I have created a somewhat better form, which is called multi step form. And this is something that you see quite often right now, or in the last couple of years, because it's very simple and much easier for the eye and from the psychological aspect, right? So multi step forms, super easy. And HubSpot has multi step forms right now. Um,
Yep. About
there are,
half of the 18 new to you updates that I went through this morning,
yeah,
and I was at zero yesterday. So 18 updates
nice.
happened yesterday. About
Nice.
half of them were for the new forms builder.
Yeah.
Um, and they're working feverishly to bring a lot of forms functionality that people have been wanting, all in the uh, including multi-step, but also bring a lot of the CMS natural, the CMS editable functionality um, that we're used to into that forms builder. So it's really cool. And if you haven't, like what we're showing you is possible in HubSpot now. Um,
Yeah.
in most cases. But I think you bring up a good point about like too often we come up with the thing that we want to do, and then we're like, okay, what kind of information do we need from the person to be able to do it? And then, okay, this means we need to have everything in the form, and it's the first time we're thinking about it, right? And when we
Yeah.
talk about mapping process and mapping data model and understanding how to create a complete picture of your customer, like um, I've been doing a show with Joshua Oakes called "Let's Build Your Audience" in HubSpot, and that's where he's done a great job of showing these steps that you talk about, and where you're building the information that you have, for the user, the customer, every interaction. And this is
Mm,
because you want to get to the point where it is personalized, it is relevant.
yeah.
But when you do that in one form, in one shot, even if you like, oh, I can break it up with multi steps, if that progress bar shows like 10% done after
Yeah.
filling out 5 fields, like, you know, I might be dropping off there too. Um,
Mm,
but a key thing is like addressing the uncertainty related to I'm giving you this information, and if I don't know why you need it, or what is going to happen if I give it to you, then I'm much less likely to do, you know,
Yeah.
what you want me to do. You can get away with this the more it gets the closer it gets to like buying stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, because people will, I've seen it in manufacturing, they will fill out some nasty forms just because they
Mm-hmm.
really need that thing on the other side of that form.
Yeah.
Um, but like you say, you can, you start to wonder why, like, oh, is our product bad? Is that why people aren't buying it? It's like, no, you just put too many fields in front of them, right? So
Yeah.
it's a nice balance, but you start describing conditional properties and we start getting into like configurators, and so we're getting super clear on what the form is supposed to be doing, in the context of the bigger strategy, right? It can't be
Yeah.
all on this form to get all the information needed. If you're starting there, you're not in the best place.
Yeah. I mean, just put yourself in the shoes of your buyer persona, right? So
Yeah.
just test it with yourself. And
And this is like I this is a little bit probably self-indulgent to add this. This is why I like trying to get people to think of the customer, like calling somebody a customer. All of a sudden, we change how we think about the experience we need to provide and what we need to deliver and how we need to deliver it, and service with a smile, like
yeah.
delight, all that stuff. Like imagine if you called them the customer the moment they gave you an email address, like because there's an exchange of value happening there. And if you wait until they give you the money to call them a customer, it's like we think about this whole upfront experience way differently,
Yeah.
right? Where if they're a customer and you're responsible for customer experience, the moment they become a customer, you move that up in the buying journey. Now you start to think of these experiences in their shoes. It's like, oh, if I was a customer, I wouldn't want to fill out all these forms. I don't have all these
Yeah.
files ready to upload for you, and I don't even know if this thing is secure. So why are you asking for all this sensitive
Mm-hmm.
information? Like, it's as soon as you're able to step into the shoes, it gets a lot easier, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Um, yeah. So again, this is a multi-step form that I've created. And one thing that I've changed here is instead of doing so many radios here, I've created just two drop downs, which is also much easier to handle. And it's just easier for the eye, right? Because also from the uh, psychological background, every human has an attention span of around 7 seconds, right? So if you also put this into your calculation, yeah, like super simple, two options, next step, right? And then the last step would be just something like this. Um, yeah,
Yeah. And I think another way
uh,
to put it, because this relates to like we generally don't want to see more than three or four options.
yeah,
This whole like if we can't understand what's going on within 7 seconds, that's when we're like our brains are actually designed to run away
yeah.
from that situation, and we do it. And digital makes it easier than
Just
ever
give
to just
me
click away.
1 second, please.
Yeah.
But you can talk. I have to open the door. One sec.
Yeah, so I think um, it really doesn't have to be more complex than that. Again, we need to build a complex system to support making this easy, but finding that balance between where they are in the journey and what information do we already know, what information do we need to know to make sure the exchange of value is relevant and will mean something and they will be happy after they filled out the form, because some people are going to fill out those crazy forms. um, but if they fill out a crazy form with a bunch of information, then all they get is a PDF, and the PDF isn't even personalized. Like, they're not doing it again, they're sharing that experience with other people. uh, so really, again, we for the reasons that Anton just shared, we have to break this topic matter up into, like last week was the atomic design, this week we're talking about forms, but none of this should be thought of without the context of your greater strategy. And that's where it can be easy, like the double-edged sword of HubSpot, is it's always been easy to go from the perspective of the tactic, where it's like, okay, we're going to do a webinar because we want to get leads. Okay, how are people signing up for the webinar? Oh, they need to register on a page. Okay, we need a form. Okay, which properties do we need on the form? Oh, we don't have a property for that yet. Oh, it's really easy to make a new property, right? It's so easy, and this is why we love the usability of HubSpot to do that direction. But when you start to do that, that's when you forget about the context of the greater strategy. You start making things in these silos. And that's where, if you think about these things, and it's why we always say start with the map, start with the journey, like start with a greater strategy to make sure each piece, especially something as important as forms, right, which are like regulated, you got to do all this work to um, uh, make sure you're not misleading people when they fill out the forms. Like, it is the primary mechanism for somebody to share information with you, via your website. And it needs to matter a lot more than most people, you know, treat it. So
Yeah. Well, I have nothing to add to this. So, I mean, w- I have two more things for the form, and I think it would be also something worth mentioning. And also, I would say most people don't know about those two things. So, uh, first of all, things that most people don't know is you can create options with icons or images, right? And why would you want to do this? Because an image is much easier to understand on icon than text, right? This is the whole purpose of icons. And the most easiest way how you can create something like this out of the box with little to no experience with coding. And this is, I think, something very important and worth mentioning is you can create a property, and if you want to display an icon or an image, just create it like this. So basically, you're putting the icon or image code into the label, right? And then you, so in this case, I assume you're using Font Awesome and you want to display the Font Awesome car icon, right? And this is like the basic code for the car icon. And the whole code, if you want to, let me create just a new slide. So the whole input would be like class. So far, far regular, for instance, then far car and optional something like radio icon, which then a developer can manually apply some styling to it if you require that. And then in the span, if you want to, also optional. But since I have a real label below that, like car and SUV, you could just write car. So this would be the whole label, right? And if you have, or if you want to use an image, basically exactly the same. Like, um, it would be image source, then path to image dot JPEG, for instance, then provide an alt tag as always, some cool image, and then also uh, let's make SUV. So you can put both into the label field, right? And then you have to apply some CSS styling if you want to, but technically this would be enough, right? Also, fun fact, this also works with the navigation. So if you want to put an icon into the navigation next to your label, this is how you do it without diving too deep into code, because with code there are a lot more possibilities, and I think we can talk about navigations sometime in the future. But for now, we are talking about forms. So this is one thing that I just wanted to highlight. And the other thing are so-called honeypots. And honeypots, let me look for, where is it? There we go. So I've created a QR code which will take you to my LinkedIn post, which is, wait, I have to do it like this. So this is my LinkedIn post. And basically, what it is all about is a workflow, a super, super simple workflow. But it will mm, prevent some spam if you do it right. And the only thing that you need is a text property. You can call it whatever you want. I recommend call it honeypot, but it's completely up to you, right? And what you do is you will add this property to any form that you want to run through this workflow and make this field hidden. This is the most important part. Make this field hidden because the honeypot is a technique that is not new, I would say. And what this does is it will prevent bots from spamming your form. How is it done? From a technical perspective, it's like, mm, I mean, if we take a look at this workflow, it's, I think, super easy to understand. Basically, it's a branch with yes or no, and we're asking in this branch like, is the honeypot unknown? Because a human will never see a hidden field, right? If it's a bot, he does not know if it's visible or hidden. So he will put something into this field. And this workflow is like, if this property is unknown, you can be sure that it is a human, because a human wouldn't fill out this property or this field. If it's a bot, then it will put something into it, and then you can stop the the form from submitting. Right? So super easy workflow, and then if it's a human, you can pass it to another workflow. And in my LinkedIn post, which is 1 year old, I'm diving quite deep in this or into this topic. So yeah, like, hey, create branches. How is it done? You can even create a delete contact action if you are really, really sure. Uh, to be honest, I wouldn't recommend to do it automatically. So, what I would do is I would pass all the contacts that have not met the or are in the not met branch. I would pass them all to a static list, and then maybe once in a month, maybe once in a quarter, whatever you want, just go through the list and see, hey, is there maybe somebody who's forcefully in this list, right? And if not, delete all the contacts that are in this list. This is about honeypots. And yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that's a big part of when you consider it in terms of the larger strategy. Um, like even with something like that, you can get away with like having one form to rule them all, uh, on your contact us page, and um, can help use stuff like this to kind of validate and verify along the way. Um, there's also a lot of new validation stuff happening related to forms, but also like when when you design your website for people to have a specific experience and they fill out this specific form on this specific product page, you don't need to necessarily ask them those specific questions. They're telling you some they're giving you some information by doing it where they are doing it. So now if you have, if it's on a specific product page, you can create hidden properties related to that product that will come into your system, and now you know a little bit more about that person. Obviously, that stuff needs to be balanced with making sure it doesn't clutter up your CRM data. So you got to be really sure that that's what that means when they fill out that form. But all of this is to what's possible when you do take into account like the form as a strategic one one of the most strategic points where you're trying to create an asynchronous situation to start the conversation, to start the relationship, to continue the relationship in a trusted way, in a way that you're not there, like to control what's happening or be there when things go wrong. Um, and so lots of tooling, and why you've invested in a platform like HubSpot, why they give you opportunities for automation everywhere around the forums, like because it shouldn't just be, hey, let's get the information and it'll send me an email notification, then I'll call the person, right? Like, no,
Yeah.
it's not. Like, you could use any system to do that. um, uh, so so take advantage, I think, is what we're trying to say here. Yeah, Anton.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, leverage the tools that you have, um, and uh, do better. Do better for your customers. Do better for your team that's having to ask the same questions over and over because we're not aligned with marketing enough to make sure they put the question on the form, or they need to word the question differently because all the responses aren't making any sense. So now we feel like we got to call up the customer anyways to confirm, or sales doesn't trust any of the information. Like, so many of uh, the misunderstandings and misalignment that happen are because we
Hmm.
we don't take advantage of a lot of these tools that we have, but we're also not reviewing as teams. Like, what's really happening at this point where we're betting all our chips on this point where we need them to convert to do the next thing, and it's not happening the way we want it to be. Are we really breaking that down and understanding each part of the process? Where is which page is the form on? What does it look like when somebody else gets to that page? What information are they having to fill out? Right? Because there's some, like, just like we talk about, if it's a if it's a PDF download, yeah, I don't want to really, I don't even want to give you my email, honestly, but that's about all I'm willing to give you.
Hmm.
Likewise, if I'm about to buy something and all you're asking is for an email address, I'm probably not doing that, because you need way more information than that to like
Yeah.
understand what I actually need. So there's a balance to say, like, okay, I know you should need all these things. See, now I'm uncertain again, right? I'm giving you some level of information. I don't think it's going to be enough. I don't know when you're going to ask me for that. Is this the experience I'm going to get? Like, it's the reason houses aren't sold on Amazon, right? There's a consultative buying experience that's needed to do those big purchases. So we're not looking for transactional. If you serve me up with a transactional buy now button and I definitely want to talk to somebody, I'm not clicking the button, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a fun, it's for me it's fun. For us it's fun, obviously,
Yeah.
as a balancing act. But that's where, once you realize that there's a balancing act to play because of how powerful forms can be, they become a real centerpiece of the strategy of serving up the best experience possible.
Yeah.
So what's one takeaway for anybody that's been watching and is maybe usually concerned with form submissions, or wants to take a steps to get better with their forms.
Uh, I mean, for me, it's always think about your user, right? So this is my personal thing, especially since I'm a business owner right now who's also putting up forms in, onto the internet. And I'm always thinking, would I share this amount of information with somebody, right? And just a few rules of thumb, I would say. Uh, if you have more than three options for property, consider or create a select or drop down option. Below that number, use radio buttons. And if you have, I would say, more than five fields, think about creating multi steps, right? Those are my rules of thumb. And just a quick addition, a side note, I have created quite a few multi-step forms before multi-step forms were even a thing in HubSpot. So I know, or there are ways how you can create multi-step forms without the new multi-step form. Is it still beta? I'm not sure. It's quite a while since I've checked that out, but there are ways, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
No, good rules of thumb. And we hope this was helpful. Um,
yeah,
so if you have not checked out your forums in a while, uh, and are also concerned with your lead volume, I'll just say put it like that. Uh, review your forms, review your conversion rates. Talk to the team who's receiving and executing on that data. Find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.
have a great one.